Om Shri Sai Ram. Welcome to everyone to the 16th episode of the Sathya Sai story. Now, each and every one of us has our own Sathya Sai story. The story of how we came to Swami, Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Or rather, shall I say, the story of how he came into our lives. For instance, at this link above is the story of how Swami became our family deity. Now, however strange might be the circumstances in which Swami came into our lives, however direct may be the circumstances in which we came to Swami, however coincidental things might seem, let us remember that we get to know of Swami, we get to experience Swami, and Swami comes into our lives only because of his will. Otherwise, it is just not possible. But when he wills, he catches us, as Shirdi Baba would say, like tying a string to the feet of a sparrow and pulling the sparrow towards him. Like that, he pulls us towards him. Here is one beautiful saga, this divine love story between a devotee and the Lord, that happened in the life of Mrs. Kamala Sarathy. Mrs. Kamala Sarathy, a very well-educated, powerful and influential woman who stayed in the north of India, in the capital city of New Delhi. She was the wife of Shri R. Paata Mandiram, who was then the additional defense secretary of the newly independent country called India. In 1949, the way, the manner, the interesting sequence of episodes because of which she came to Swami is truly fascinating as it is inspiring. But before we go into that, let us again go back to that remote little hamlet called Puttaparthi, where this young little lad, Satyanarayan Raju, had declared himself as Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. In fact, he had not yet become Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, he was only Sri Sathya Sai. In this episode, we will see how he became Bhagawan. He was anointed as Bhagawan, he was appointed as Bhagawan, he was celebrated as Bhagawan by the devotees. Swami was like a member of the family, a very close friend to all the devotees who came to him in the Paata Mandiram. On a regular basis, he would take devotees to the banks of the River Chitravati, where there would be miracles galore. Let me recount two of them to give you the setting before we go into depth of today's episode. One has been recounted by Srimati Nagamani Purnaya. Swami picked up a little water from the Chitravati river, asked her to stretch out her palm, and as he dropped a few drops of that water into her palm, in mid-air, those water drops metamorphosed into a beautiful gold talisman which dropped into her palm. She was thrilled. Swami said, "Wear this on your neck. This is my symbol of protection. You will be safe and your life will be well taken care of as long as you live." Not just that, he then picked up a fistful of sand and held it out high up. As the wind blew away all that sand, what revealed what was there was a beautiful ring with a birthstone of her own son. Swami gifted this to Nagamani Purnaya's son and told him to wear it. These are the kinds of miracles that happened on the banks of River Chitravati. One more amazing one is, whenever Swami would walk with the devotees and go to the Chitravati banks, there was an old woman staying in a hut nearby. She would come out of her hut and offer tulsi leaves at the lotus feet of Swami. One day, Swami asked her also to join along with the retinue. And as she proceeded and sat on the sands of River Chitravati, Swami asked her, "What do you want? Ask for what is dearest in your heart and I shall grant it to you." The woman made an impossible wish. She said that she would like to have a photograph of her long dead husband. Her husband had passed away in 1924, 2 years before the divine advent of Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Swami smiled at her, touched her, blessed her on the head, and then picked out from the sand a passport size photograph of her dead husband. as he gave it to her, she was besides herself with joy. She had tears of Ananda streaming through her cheeks, and it was as if she had seen her husband himself. This is because back in those days, there was nothing like photography that was there in this remote village of Puttaparthi. She cherished and kept that photograph of her husband as her husband himself till she passed away. It is in such beautiful settings that Mrs. Kamala Sarathy got her invitation from Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba to come to him. In the previous episodes, we have been introduced to the Carnatic singer duo, the twins Shri B.V. Raman and Shri B.V. Lakshmanan. In case you missed that, you can binge watch all the episodes so far of the Sathya Sai story at this link above. Here is the entire playlist. You can fill your heart with Swami with more than 300 minutes of his story. Shri B.V. Raman used to stay in Madras. Shri B.V. Lakshmanan used to stay in New Delhi at the residence of Mrs. Kamala Sarathy, because he was the music teacher to her two daughters, the elder daughter named Leela and the younger daughter named Prema. They had a huge bungalow, a huge residence in Delhi, and in the annex building used to be the quarters of Shri B.V. Lakshmanan. One day, a mail had arrived for Shri B.V. Lakshmanan. It was a postcard, an open form of communication, and Leela, who happened to see this, read what was there in that. And in that, Shri B.V. Raman had written to his brother that you must come to Puttaparthi because Swami is calling for you. Come here in the summer, and also you must come for Dasara. Not just that, Swami has told to invite Mrs. Kamala Sarathy also. He is calling for her. Now, seeing her mother's name in the postcard, Leela was very intrigued and she ran to her mother and said, "Look, what is this?" The mother first reprimanded her and told her it's bad manners to read others' letters, but her curiosity was also piqued. So they went and communicated this to Shri B.V. Lakshmanan. He told everything about Sathya Sai Baba, how they had been to him in the inauguration of the Shirdi Baba temple at Gindi, and later on Swami had invited them to sing at the Paata Mandiram during the Shivratri of 1949. All of this he related to them. Now all these coincidences, all these happenings were very, very interesting, and therefore Mrs. Kamala Sarathy decided to take her two daughters and travel to Puttaparthi. And that's how in the summer of 1949, Mrs. Kamala Sarathy along with her daughters and a few other family members found herself in Madras. Now before they could go to Puttaparthi, Prema fell very sick. She had severe stomach upset, she was very sick, and they were on the verge of cancelling the trip to Puttaparthi. But even as that thought came in Ms. Kamala Sarathy's head, instantly the daughter became fine. Prema seemed to get better, and she was told that this is a sign from Swami that they should travel. And so the travel plans were kept alive, and it was 13 of them who set out to Puttaparthi in the summer, the June-July of 1949. It included Ms. Kamala Sarathy, her two daughters Leela and Prema, her nephew Varadu. Apart from that, there were the twins Raman, Lakshmanan. There were a few other devotees also, including a certain Mrs. Rema. All of them travelled to Penukonda, and from there they had to wait for a bus which had 13 empty seats. And by the time they got to Bukkapatnam, they reached Bukkapatnam around 9:30 at night, and they had to force somebody, beg somebody, pay a lot of money to get a bullock cart to travel to Puttaparthi. They reached Puttaparthi at 11 in the night. And then they were walking the last stretch of journey. As they were walking, this devotee whom I said, Mrs. Rema, she said, "Look," and pointed to the sky. There was a brilliant shooting star that came and descended over the Paata Mandiram. And everyone wondered what it was, and Mrs. Kamala Sarathy was sure that it was a shooting star. But then this Rema said, no, this is Swami who is coming back, who is returning after his Loka Sanchara. She then explained, you see, when the world sleeps, Swami travels all around the world blessing different devotees. And he has just completed that and he is returning. That is the light. Well, this is not simply being said, because we know how Way back in 1942 itself, during the Second World War, Swami travelled to London to save Mr. Jogneshwar Gogoi. That is there at this link above. Not just that, Swami had travelled even to the country Thailand, where he saved another devotee, Dr. Art Ong Jum Sai. That is another beautiful story which also contains the story of Swami materializing a live monkey. That is there at this link above. So witnessing this, there was some kind of awe in Mrs. Kamala Sarathy, but she was discounting all of this and thinking people are going mad in love with this person, and she was so tired after this long journey. That is when, as Mrs. Prema Bose, later, this younger daughter, Prema, she got married to Mr. Amar Bose, who is the founder of the Bose sound systems that we know today, the speakers, the headphones, the world-class quality brand. So, Mrs. Prema Bose had revealed in an interview how they suddenly had a flash of light on the floor. They were on the ground. What was that? That was Swami with his torch at 3 in the morning, shining the light so that they can see the path and come. And Swami had kept a corner for them where they could occupy and go to bed. The next day morning by 8:30 they had completed their ablutions, and then they came to Swami, and Swami smiled at Ms. Kamala Sarathy and said, "Finally you have come. I called you, I guided you, I directed you, and I have pulled you to myself." Of course, at that point in time, Ms. Kamala Sarathy didn't accept these words. She had planned to be in Puttaparthi for a few days so that she could rest and recuperate before leaving, but Swami convinced her to stay on for 1 month. During the month that she stayed there, she witnessed all these leelas, mahimas and miracles, but she was not impressed at all. In fact, when Shri B.V. Raman and B.V. Lakshmanan would sing Tyagaraja Kritis for Swami and even with Swami, they would often replace the word Rama with Sai. And Mrs. Kamala Sarathy frowned upon this. She did not like this. For them, it was an expression of their devotion, their bhava. They used Tyagaraja's songs as a vehicle to offer their love to Swami. But then there was something about Swami that struck very deeply in Mrs. Kamala Sarathy's heart. She saw the kind of devotion, love and adoration that Swami evoked in the hearts of the devotees. And it was not simply because of his magnetic personality. It was because of his ceaseless, tireless efforts and work that he did, constantly thinking of them. She had never seen anybody so selfless all her life. She would see how Swami would be there welcoming the devotees. Swami would be there bidding goodbye to them. In fact, Swami would pick up the children and put them on the cart, giving them gifts and telling them to come back soon, telling them that he would miss them. And then Swami would stand waving with his handkerchief goodbye to them till they disappeared down the horizon. More importantly, Mrs. Kamala Sarathy witnessed how these devotees would break down and weep. They would cry and cry and cry. They didn't want to leave Swami at all. They have so much love for him. And she was reminded of the Gopikas and Gopalas of the Dwapara Yuga crying for Krishna. One day when she was witnessing all of this, she was lost in thought. She was in reverie, thinking, wow, what is this magical bond? What is this relationship? Nothing comes close to this other than what I have read about the devotee and the Lord. Such selflessness and such love from Swami. Forget all these miracles, forget all these things. This love and selflessness, maybe it is God. Maybe this is what God is. God is not about miracles. God is about pure love and selflessness. She was lost in these thoughts. And as she was thinking this, there was a whisper behind her. She was startled and she came out of her reverie. It was Swami. And Swami said, "You are thinking along the right lines. Continue thinking like this and the truth will become apparent to you." That is how Swami began to transform the heart of Mrs. Kamala Sarathy. And in that 1 month, she too became a devotee of Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Swami became the Lord of her heart. There were many other interesting miracles, as I said, that happened during this time. One was related to her nephew Varadu. He was a photographer and therefore he used to keep taking photos of Swami. And one day, as Swami came fresh after his bath and did a puja in the mandir, he took photographs of Swami conducting a worship. Amazing, right? I wish I could show you those photos, but I cannot, because Swami told this Varadu that you have taken my pictures till now. They will not come because I didn't want them to come. Now you may click and now the photos will come. And Swami posed for him sitting in the altar and he clicked 3 more photographs. Weeks later, when he was back, he himself developed the whole film. He didn't even entrust it to any other photo place. And when he did it, he saw that the first 5 photographs were all blanks. The next 3, which he clicked with Swami's permission, they had come. You know, when I read about this, I felt so thrilled, having been Swami's photographer and taken his photographs. I realized that each and every picture that he gives is his gift. We can never click his picture unless he wills it. And we have so many beautiful pictures like this. We must be so grateful to Swami for having granted us these photographs. These photographs are not mere photographs. They are his physical representations. They are the manifestations of his will. And he responds to us through these photographs. There are a couple of beautiful experiences of how Swami responds to us through photographs. That is there at this link above. At the end of the month, before she could leave, Swami granted a personal audience to Ms. Kamala Sarathy and her 2 daughters. And Swami told Ms. Kamala Sarathy that the greatest obstacles in your spiritual path are your 2 daughters, your attachment to them. Don't be so attached to them. Let them go and you will progress spiritually. And then Swami blessed her by manifesting a photograph of an Om in which Swami's bust was there. He told her to keep this in her altar at home and that he would always be there with her. Not just that, Swami also materialized a talisman for Prema, and then Swami said, I know she had severe stomachache before. That was amoebiasis. I have taken care of it. But once you get back to Delhi, show her to a doctor and follow the prescribed treatment that the doctor suggests. So that is how Swami bid them goodbye. But as I said in the beginning of this episode, Swami had wanted them to come even for the Dasara festival in 1949. Now, at that point in time, both Leela and Prema had their examinations, and therefore Ms. Kamala Sarathy was against wanting to travel to Puttaparthi. You see, there itself it became so evident when Swami said your attachment to your daughters is what will hold you back. Already, without her realizing it, it was acting up. But then Swami is always there to help us in our detachment, to help us in our progress. Soul progress is soul progress. No other progress is worth it. And Swami went in the dream of Ms. Kamala Sarathy. In the dream, she saw a large seashore on which she was standing, and on that seashore was also a large pond in which her 2 daughters were playing. And Swami was beside her asking, what is wrong if they learn swimming? Let them learn, because later they will have to go into the ocean. And then Ms. Kamala Sarathy said, Swami, I too would like to learn how to swim. And Swami said, but you are already in the ocean. Be alert and never say no to God. And with that, the dream ended. The next day, she understood. She understood that though we are parents or children or relatives, all of this is in a worldly sense. Ultimately, we are all the Jivatmas moving towards the Paramatma. And so she decided that come what may, she would travel to Puttaparthi for Dasara. And very coincidentally, one of her brothers offered to stay at home and take care of the 2 daughters so that she could travel to Puttaparthi for Dasara. And that is how Mrs. Kamala Sarathy travelled in the October of 1949 to witness the first ever Dasara of her life. The Dasara of 1949 is beautifully described by Vijayamma Garu in her book Anyatha Sharanam Nasti. This was a time of heavy floods. The whole of Puttaparthi and the region around was so flooded that people had to take a detour from Penukonda, travel all the way till Gorantla, and from there almost trek up to 10 miles, which is 17 to 18 kilometers over the hills and valleys to get to the Paata Mandiram, to get to Swami. But then they were so focused, everybody walked. They were ready to do so much tapas and penance for Swami. All of us in the later years, when we travelled by car, bus, flight and got to Puttaparthi, we had it very easy. These people have done literal penance to get to Swami. But Swami was there welcoming them at Paata Mandiram with all the food cooked ready for them. He would feed them to their stomach's content. He would bless them with darshan, sparshan and sambhashanam to their heart's content. And that was the time when unprecedented crowds were seen in Puttaparthi despite the severe floods. Many times the flood waters would be knee deep, and yet people stayed on to get God. God is the greatest gift in the universe, and we should be ready to sacrifice everything for God. We are not ready to give up even little comforts, and we complain and we think God is the one who should make our life a bed of roses. God has come for the redemption not of our bodies, not of our minds, but of our souls, to teach us who we really are, to take us beyond happiness and sorrow itself, so that sorrow will never touch us again, not just in this life, but any lifetimes ahead, and then we achieve the ultimate peace at His lotus feet. That was the blessing that devotees got during the Dasara. In fact, Mr. Hemchand, the husband of Vijayamma Garu, their marriage also Swami had performed. If you remember, we had described that in a previous episode. So he was in charge of some of the kitchen supplies, and one day he rushed to Swami and said, Swami, we don't have any sugar at all. Swami said, don't worry, go to the Chitravati, get sand in a sack and come over here. That's what he did. He went to the Chitravati river bank. Wherever little water was not there, from there he gathered the sand. One sack full of sand was brought to Swami. Swami patted the sack and told him to open it and use it for the sweets that were being prepared. And there was a sack full of sugar. That is what Swami does to each one of our lives, dear brothers and sisters. He touches our lives, which are as insipid, tasteless and dirty as mud, transforms it into sweet sugar, such sweet sugar that our lives too begin to sweeten anybody else's life which we are a part of. That is the transmutational touch, the alchemist's touch, the Lord's touch. You know, such were the Leelas and Mahimas of Swami during Dasara, and there was a very beautiful discourse, the details of which I shall go into in the next episode. But it was at the end of that discourse that overwhelmed devotees began to scream out aloud, Jai Bolo Bhagawan Shri Sathya Sai Baba Ji ki Jai! Jai Bolo Bhagawan Shri Sathya Sai Baba Ji ki Jai! That is how they began to address Swami. They called him their Bhagawan. Till now, what was an expression of the heart became a vocal expression also, and this continued throughout Swami's life. I myself remember 2-3 occasions when I got this chance where Swami's car would be passing or Swami would be walking, and I shouted out, Jai Bolo Bhagawan Shri Sathya Sai Baba Ji ki, and everyone would say, Jai. That is how the first Dasara concluded. That is how Mrs. Kamala Sarathy and her family became devotees of Swami. In fact, her grandson was Swami's college alumnus. Swami selected him to be the first alumnus to head the university as the registrar of the Sri Sathya Sai University, Dr. Naren Ramji. I'm just sharing this to show how somebody who was skeptical about Swami has her whole family now devoted to Swami. We are grateful to you, Swami, for having come into our lives in whatever way. We are grateful that we get this opportunity to love you. May the love that we have for you in our hearts keep growing stronger every passing moment. Thank you. Jai Sai Ram.